I was born in Taiwan, grew up in Canada, and I've been living in mainland China for the past 14 years. I didn't really feel all that Taiwanese growing up in Canada. But what's really interesting is that the first time I really felt I was Taiwanese was, in all places, my workplace. So let me set this up. One day, I was just working away at my cubicle at a company in Vancouver, Canada. And out of the blue, I get an email. I don't even know who it is. The email just has one line. It asks me, "Are you Taiwanese?" The person sending it to me is someone in the same company as I am, whom I don't know. They must have seen my last name spelled HSU, the Taiwanese spelling, and they just made an assumption and they fired off an email. I had no idea why they're asking me, but I just very innocently replied, "Yes, I am." And next thing I knew, I was being invited to an all Taiwanese group at work. There was a group of coworkers who all had this identity, and I was being invited to the lunches, social events, all that kind of stuff. The person who invited me, who asked me, never ended up pontificating what this club was about. It was just assumed that you were in if you were Taiwanese. And there was no talk of identity whatsoever. Nothing about our backgrounds. Hey, where are you from in Taiwan? It was just assumed that you were now in the club. I would say that my first experience in something like this did feel surreal. If I'm being honest, it felt a little bit uncomfortable, but it also made me realize how closed off and insular this cultural group can be. It felt like a clique. That's what it felt like. It felt like high school all over again, even though we were all working professionals at this point. Compare and contrast this to many, many years later when I was working in mainland China. I did get exposed to certain Taiwanese groups in places like Beijing and Shanghai where I worked and lived. But it felt very, very, very different. Yes, there was a loosely held group, but it felt a little bit more inclusive. And I think there's also a selection bias here because the Taiwanese that live and work in mainland China, they probably have a more global and open perspective about how things are. And that's why they choose to do business or they choose to settle there. It never felt like a clique, the same way that I felt when I was invited to that group in Canada. So obviously, these are all anecdotes. This is just one person's experience, my experience. It's not meant to be indicative. Thanks for watching, and I'd love to know what you think.